Thank you everyone. I'll reconvene the meeting. For those of you on the live stream, our apologies, we've had some technical difficulties, so we opened the meeting briefly and adjourned so that we could solve that, and now we seem to have everyone participating and audible, so that's great. It's a real pleasure, even a belated one, to open this meeting of the Planning and Environment Committee, and a particular pleasure to welcome our two new members, Ms. Wesley and Mr. Ellison. I know colleagues will share my pleasure that we are putting into effect the council decision that we made some months ago to welcome two representatives from our two local runaka to our decision making. And I'd like to pass now to the Mayor for him to formally welcome our two new members, and then we'll proceed with the business of the meeting.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chairman, and tēnā kōrua. No mai haere mai. It's a significant day, as I said this morning, and as the Chairman has just indicated, in having for the first time our appointed representatives from Te Rūranga o Otago and Kati Huirapa ki te Pukataraki here to ensure that we have a sense of the mana whenua perspective and what are some fairly significant discussions and decisions that we are having and making, both in the planning and environment realm, but earlier also in the infrastructure services realm. And while it obviously would have been preferable for this occasion to have been undertaken kānohi ki te kānohi, sadly here we are in pandemic protection world where that is not possible at present, but look forward to that opportunity presenting itself in due course. And I'd like to invite Mr. Ellison and Ms. Wesley to comment at this point if they felt so moved.
Tēnā reka te kōrua mātua. Me whakautu e nei tēnei ni ki a koutou mā. Tēnei roku whakahare o te Planning and Environment Committee. Te tūnga kia pai ai te mātou haerenga, i roki tēnei huarahi hau. Anō e tēnā koe, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your welcome to myself and Ms. Wesley. Over to you, Rachel.
Kia ora, Masapura. Aku nei mihi ki a koutou, ngā hoa mahi o te kōmiti nei, ki a koe ki te koro mātua o te kainihira o te puti, ki a koutou ngā mema o ngā kainihira o te puti. Kei te tino harikoa ki te huihuinga tātou katoa. So reiterating Mr. Ellison's thanks to the Mayor and to you all for welcoming us in such a warm manner. Looking forward to this new journey for both Te Rūranga o Otago and Kati Huirapa ki Pukataraki Rūnaka. So aku mihi ki a koutou. Kia ora.
Sure. And welcome again to you both. Let's proceed with the meeting then. There is no public forum and nor are there any apologies, which takes us to item 3. I'll move that we confirm the agenda without any additional alteration. Can I have a second by Councillor Walker? Any discussion? I'll put your hand up, please, if you agree. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. That's agreed. And that takes us to the declaration of interests. I'll remind you that if there are any changes that need to be made, you could do that now or do that subsequently in writing with the GSOs. Anything that anyone needs to raise today? I'll move that we confirm the list of declarations and management procedures. Can I have a second, please? Councillor Staines, those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. That is agreed, and that takes us to the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting of 2 November 21. I'll move that we confirm the public part of the minutes of that meeting as a correct record. Seconded by anyone, Councillor Barker. Any discussion about the accuracy of those minutes? There appears to be none. If you agree with that, please raise your hand. And against? That is agreed. Thank you very much. Now, item 6, the actions and resolutions of the Planning and Environment Committee meetings. I'll move that committee notes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair,
correction first, Mr. West.
Yes, there's a minor correction. Apologies in the agenda item that was sent out. It relates to item number 2 in the open actions of the public resolutions, where we have a piece of work that staff are working on around the future development strategy as an implication of change in legislation with urban intensification. And in the status, it implies that you're receiving a meeting at today's committee meeting. That should have read that it will be at a future committee meeting. So apologies for that.
All right. Well, in due course, I'll move that. But in the interim, are there any questions about that schedule? Councillor Elder.
I'm just looking at, I might be a bit muddled up here. So are we looking at future work program?
No, we're looking at actions.
Oh, sorry,
6.
I'm on the wrong page.
You don't have a question, that's fine.
I don't have a question on
any
that one.
questions about, then you don't need to talk. Any questions about item 6? Appear to be none. I'll move that we, with that amendment that Mr. West detailed, I'll move that we note that schedule, seconded by Councillor Barker. Any discussion? Those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. That's agreed. And now we go to item 7, the Planning and Environment Committee Forward Work Programme. Can I just bring to your attention the problem with the those of you who have printed copies? This is page 35 in the original printed copy, and page 27 if you're on the Big Tin Can electronic data. Questions? Councillor Elder.
I have 2 questions. The National Policy Statement on Urban Development and the Business Land Capacity Assessment has been commissioned. I was just wondering how this was being done and how does it speak to both Roading and Three Waters?
Mr. Drew is unable to attend this afternoon. I'm afraid, sorry, I can't answer that for you, Councillor, but I certainly will find that out for you.
Okay. My next...
I'll just make one comment about it because it's been part of the work that I've been doing that you're aware of in mediations. And you'll know that from the earlier reporting we've had on 2 or 3 occasions to the committee that a lot of the outcomes of those mediations in the court have been determined by where we are able to provide services or not, which is part of our decision making about the location of our provision of appropriate capacity. But Mr. Drew will be able to comment more. You can have that information.
I'll ask him to follow up, Councillor.
And your second question, Councillor.
My second question is just on the management reviews of open spaces and parks and reserves, etc. And I note that upcoming is the town belt. And I was just wondering again, a question related to the destination plan and being able to link some of these parks through cycleways or walking tracks or shared paths, and whether that economic impact or destination development, as well as connecting communities through walking and biking, is considered in those management plans.
Apologies again, Councillor. Mr. Pickford and Mr. McLean are not on the meeting this afternoon, but I'll certainly note that down for asking to ensure that as they go through those that is considered, but they'll be able to answer your question more fully.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that.
All right. Any further questions about that item?
Councillor Gary.
No, then I will move.
Councillor Gary.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it was just around page 41 in my printed copy, the Otago Boat Harbour Reserve Management Plan and Otago Harbour Reserve Management Plan. And you may not be able to answer this, Mr. West, but I was interested to know how extensive that is. Is that harbour wide? I mean, it refers to the boat harbour, but the second part of that, is that harbour wide?
Again, apologies, councillor, but I cannot answer that. So
could someone get back to me and let me know?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No further questions? All right, I'll move that we note that report. I'll have a seconder, please. Councillor Stones. Any discussion? I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. That's agreed. That takes us to the activity report for the period to 31 December. This is page 43 for those with printed papers and 35 on the electronic version. Any questions? Everyone's unreservedly happy. And that, Councillor Lord.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just struggling to find the page number. I thought we might have, it was
43.
Oh, no, sorry, my questions are relating to the next item.
Okay. No one else seems to be waving, so I will. Councillor Reddick.
And Councillor Hall, I think.
And Mr.
My question's on page 49. We have the graphs here. We did at one stage, in terms of resource consent timeframes met, wonder if there was going to be a corresponding report with RFIs, because of course this report speaks to the reports done in the timeframes, but the timeframes are very often extended by requests for information, whether that, if people, applicants have not supplied all the required information. So we did talk at a previous meeting about having a corresponding RFI. So is there one coming, or is it going to be? What is the plan there?
Are you able to make any
I'll
comment?
hand over to Ms. Austin and Mr. Henderson, who are
both there?
Yep.
Kia ora tātou, ko Black Knock te mauna, ko Blackwater te awa, ko Ngāti Parahi te iwi, ko Fitzgerald te hapu, ko Claire Austin ahau, kai whakahaere customer regulatory. Tēnei te mihi a kohua nā renga hau o ātapu, me te kāti hui rapa nā mai haere mai. So yes, there is work underway, Councillor. There's a number of work both in resource consents and building consents around looking at much more educational initiatives and pro-consent application meetings, so that we can actually work actively and making sure that we're informing submitters as to what's required by the legislation.
Thank you.
Right. I think it would be helpful just, for us as councillors to have some indication of how many resource consents are accompanied or require an RFI, because one of the questions I get asked a lot is, the resource consents are taking a long time and they're held up with RFIs, but very often that's the fault of the submitter, the applicant.
I'm sure there'll be no difficulty having that information provided.
Yes, that information is collected so we can provide it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall, did you have a question?
Yeah, prepared to move or second, whichever required.
Thank you, Councillor. No other questions there, so I will accept that. Who?
Councillor Walker.
Councillor Walker, did you have a question?
He's second.
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mr. West, for noticing my
All right, that's fine. Well, it's moved and seconded. We've got 2 more questions here. We'll deal with those first. Councillor Gary.
Yes, and I see the Mayor has his hand up too. I'm not sure if you can see the hands
I
up.
can now. I can now. Yes.
So my question was around item 14 on the printed copy, page 48, around Taironi. And I see that there's progress in the work. How much has the COVID setting and the red light, traffic light setting affected that work, or likely to affect progress on that work? And you may not be able to answer that, Mr. West, but happy for someone to get back to me.
I will ask Mr. McLean. He'll have a much better understanding of the timeline for that project these days than I.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 3 questions from me. One is in the regulatory field. It was Austin, looking at, where are we? It's page 50 of the papers, looking at alcohol licensing inspections, of which one was undertaken in the previous quarter against a target of 50. And the logic there is that you know, there haven't been as many events and therefore temporary licenses that would ordinarily be inspected. But is this a separate thing to what I presume is undertaken by way of inspection of enduring license holders in fixed premises?
So basically, what's traditionally been reported on is events only, and because of obviously COVID, there was only one organised event, but in fact there was 119 liquor inspections done in that period.
That's good to know, and something for us to think about, both from a metrics point of view and a reporting point of view, and that's fine. I've got a couple of other questions, Mr. Chairman. I don't know where they go. One is a potentially an urban design question, but it speaks to the suburban centres upgrades, and they are now imminent, having been distant from a budget point of view for some time, and the work starting from July if there's budget in 22-23. I'm just wondering when we would anticipate seeing a schedule or a program of those works, as in, you know, which suburban centres are being looked at and when is that happening?
Again, I'm very sorry, Your Worship, I'm unable to answer that question. I will certainly make note of it and we'll get back to you on it.
Yeah, it's not urgent. I mean, it's not until the next financial year, so the next committee round's probably fine. Thanks. And the third thing is perhaps slightly more urgent, and it's around the appetite or not of business, particularly hospitality businesses, to make greater use of outdoor space in the current public health situation, where people may be more comfortable dining outdoors than they are indoors for ventilation reasons, etc. And just wondering what work, if any, is going on to make that as easy as possible for people, or indeed to proactively offer that as an option for people who may not have considered that we would have the power to do that.
So I'll jump in. Mr. Christie and I've had an initial discussion about that and intend to progress that alongside Ms. Austin's team and look at what might be best. We don't have a clear sense of if anything is required, but we're about to look at how to have that conversation with the relevant folk.
Great, thank you.
Very helpful, thank you. Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wanting to talk to urban development and resource management and consents. And I was just wondering, given that Dunedin is in a growth phase, how the resourcing is going for us to be able to meet timeframes and get the work done.
Well, that's probably an answer for the Chief Executive, isn't it? A question for Ms. Graham.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
She's no longer with us.
Oh, I'm here. Apologies. I caught the tail end of the question, but if Councillor Elder wouldn't mind, through the chair, repeating the front end of it.
Given that we are in a growth phase as a city and there's more consents being required and building being done, how is our resourcing for staffing in this area?
Well, councillor, if you'll recall in the annual plan budget, we agreed an additional 9 folk in Mr Henderson's area to start to meet some of the demand that we're seeing. And also, and Ms Austin will correct me, I think 1 or 2 additional folk in the resource consent team as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, sorry. Kia ora, ko Carmen Houlihan aho, ko Teki Timu te Waka, ko Aparima te Awa, ko Teki Timu te Mona, ko Ngāi Tahu te Iwi, ko Aureka Aparima te Runaka. On page, where it's referring to the page 48, Mosgiel Town Centre minor amenity improvements, will that result in any loss of car parking, that change?
Again, I'm very sorry, councillor. With Mr Drew not here this afternoon, I'm unable to answer that question, but I will certainly make note of it and get back to you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? There appear to be none. In that case, I'll move that we note the update report on city development, resource consents, regulatory services provided in the attachments A and B. I have a seconder in Councillor Walker. Any discussion? There appears to be none. I'll put the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Geary.
Thank you, Mr Chair, and my apologies. I thought we were working through each of the reports and I wasn't quick enough to get on top of that. So I'll just include it in debate. I note that, so thank you to the staff for the report. There's a great deal going on in this space, and I do have concerns about resourcing right now for our team. I know that, you know, there's a lot going on, and I take the Chief's point around our annual plan decisions, but I noted the comment in the report that traditionally there are high numbers of inspections, for example, pre-Christmas, and there were workforce issues at that time. I was very pleased to see that with customer letters, we're looking at an easier to understand, and I'm assuming that's a plain English as opposed to local government speak. I do get feedback that is an area where our community really struggle. When they receive a letter from council, we think we're communicating really clearly. We know the context of what we're dealing with, but for our community that don't necessarily interact with us all the time, it can be quite challenging. And I am aware that there's work going on in the regulatory space around consistency through the enforcement of regulatory requirements. And that's great to see. But I also just flag an opportunity that we have right here, right now, and the Mayor touched on it, but there are other areas, particularly for our hospo industry, as immediately as today and this week, where they are struggling to get their head around what to do right now to keep their customers safe and their staff safe, and that this is quite different to last year where there was a directive and a lockdown. And certainly, you know, many of them are trying, most of them are trying to follow the rules, but I think there is an opportunity for us, if I take environmental health, for example, to not only be enforcing regulations, but to be acting in a role as mentor advisor, to walk alongside our cafes and hospo industry to assist them where they have queries. And so I was very pleased to hear the question that His Worship asked, but I think that there is an opportunity there for council to get alongside our hospo businesses, because we're all in this together, and these are uncharted territories to a greater extent. And I've certainly had examples of that today. There tends to be curveballs that hit you from the sideline. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give a shout out to Dunedin restaurants and cafes who are struggling in these challenging times. And I see that the percentage of A-grade food premises has increased to 94%. So I think that's something that's worth noting, that they are struggling and that they've been doing this amazing achievement. And thank you to the team who've been inspecting them. And I know they work very hard with the premises to keep raising that grade. So it's really impressive to see.
Thank you. Further speakers? There appear to be none. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, please raise the hand. Against, no. That is overwhelmingly agreed. And Dr. Hazelton, I think, should be lurking outside the door right now and about to appear on the screen. Or if not, he's not far away. Materialise on time. So, first of all, can I say, Dr. Hazelton, how pleased I was to see the detail in the report that you've attached as an appendix, and what I think is quite zany sort of editorial focus of it. It's just gorgeous. So I'm sure the colleagues, some will agree, some probably won't, but many will have questions of you, and we'll go to those first before we move the noting recommendation. Councillor Lord.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Look, could I just ask you about item 10? The group has met 3 times, the Retail Quarter Reference Group, Construction Reference Group, they've met 3 times, and it does say that a number of the original members have not been present in any of the meetings. I'm just wondering if there's a backstory to that, if they chosen not to be a part of it because they've got a different view. And I just wondered also if you could include in the answer the general approval from owners of the buildings versus users of the buildings. Is there any comment to make in that area about who may or may not be in support of what we're trying to do there?
Answer to the first one, followed that up with Councillor Staines to discuss, as the chair of the group, how we should approach that moving forward. We have sent reminders out, and I've followed up a number of the people who have been absent so far to just check, is there a reason why you haven't come along? And most of the responses have been, yeah, no, that's fine, I'll definitely be there next time, and then people haven't. So I don't think it's specifically related to the decision around the direction of the road. I think it's probably just people are busy. We've tried a mix of times for the meetings, and we'll give it another crack later this month to see whether people do come along. In terms of the second part of the question, actually, sorry, on that first part also, just say that because this group is focused predominantly on construction issues, we haven't been discussing the decision made by council. It's been predominantly around operational issues. So I don't necessarily think that it is opposition to that that's causing people not to come to the meeting, also because they were brought onto that group knowing that it was purely operational. In terms of the second part to the question, no, I don't really have any data on that. That hasn't been particularly clear in terms of a split between businesses and owners. I've heard comments both ways from both sides of that equation, but I haven't been keeping any good data on it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van der Vos.
Can we know who is the chair and who were the members that didn't show up?
I don't think that second. I don't think the second part's appropriate. But the chair is Councillor Staines, as was just mentioned. Councillor, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a number of questions, a number of additional questions, in fact. If we look at 12, we've got the DCC running workshops, ostensibly to tell businesses how to present online. So that's actually 13. How is it that we have the expertise to tell businesses how to improve their digital presence and learn more about retailing online? Where do we get that expertise from?
We've contracted that expertise in. Those workshops are not being run by council. They're being run by someone who ran similar workshops as a program across the country for MB called Digital Boost.
Thank you. Further question?
Okay, and I hadn't finished yet, if you don't mind. I said I had several questions.
I did say further questions.
My next question is, there's a series of activations proposed on 14. I understand that the lighting and auditory installation one has already been made public. What is the cost proposed for these activations, and which budget are they coming out of? Are they coming out of the $60 million upgrade budget?
Correct, they are coming out of the $60 million upgrade budget. We had a budget set aside this year for the first stage of $300,000, but of that, that's a mix of different activations. So we've got $100,000 for Dunedin Dream Brokerage over the next year.
And does the broad multimedia marketing campaign, Totally Gorgeous, come out of the same budget?
Correct, it does, yes.
So that would also go then for the installed throughout the Dunedin City pedestrian counters. Is that coming out of the same budget?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And the last one, enabling works continuing in London, Frederick and Floyle Street, pre-construction, etc. Do they come out of that budget, or are they addition?
They do come out of that same budget as well, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hazelton, for an excellent update. Actually, it's very exciting. I have two questions. My first question relates to item 13, also, which is a great initiative, the workshops. And question may be ahead of time, but has sign up begun for those yet? And if so, how's that tracking?
Sign up has only just started. We've had a couple of inquiries so far, but we've also got the gentleman that's running the first series of those coming down to go door to door starting from next week. He'll be popping into businesses in those first areas and trying to drum up some more support that way. I guess it links to a broader issue that we're trying multiple different ways to get in contact with building owners and business owners, as one method does not seem to suit all. So I think a combination of, in this case, the ODT, as well as some online, in-person stuff out there will help get out to those people.
Cool, thank you. And my next question relates to item 11 and the block groups. And again, it may be too soon for an answer. How is the formation of those going? Has that begun?
It's only begun in the sense that as we've been out delivering letters and talking to people around the construction issues, we've been suggesting for those who are the most interested in being involved that they would like to start forming the core of those groups. But I think probably in relation to previous reports that have come up, it's a really tough time out there, and finding time for businesses to take extra time out to involve themselves in these activities is a bit challenging. So I'm trying to not push that too hard at the moment, but there are some groups where I think they're naturally starting to come together, particularly around some of the food and beverage businesses in New Edinburgh Way.
Okay, and just a subsequent question, and I don't know if it's pertinent to ask this, but do we know yet, and forgive me if I should know this, which block we will begin with first?
Our proposal is currently to start with the farmers block first. Okay. The reason for that being it's the shortest block. Also, it has the highest level of current vacancy as well in terms of business and sort of shops being empty. And there's the least number of access ways off it. So it's one of the comparatively most easiest blocks for us to work in. So that's our current proposal, and we're delivering letters as of tomorrow to notify owners of that and workshopping with them next week.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Geary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just noticed Dr. Heseltine mentioned the words coming down, which suggested that the contractors from out of town And I wondered about local knowledge and networks and so forth. And it leads to a more generic question of, could you remind us of the procurement policy when contractors are being selected?
In this case, I did say coming down for this one, we chose as a pilot. So we've done this first one, the business one, as a pilot scheme, and tapped into someone who's already run the same course for MB. So we thought there was a good approach there to make it as easy as possible. That's for the first 15 businesses. After that, if there does prove to be good sign up for the idea, because as both Councillor Vandervis and Councillor Walker have pointed out, this is a bit of a different thing for us to try. If it does prove successful, then we'd like to put it out as an RFP to local businesses. But in this case, that one was just based on the fact that we had a same scheme that we could tap into to roll out here again from someone who's already delivered it.
Thank you for that clarification. And my second question was around archaeological finds. Are you anticipating that there may well be archaeological finds, given the 1800s dating of the pipe work? That would be that would not be a surprise, would it?
Correct. We have a consultant archaeologist involved in the project, and they're out there on pretty much a weekly basis. There's a discovery protocol that the team employs. So there's already been numerous finds, all sorts of things from shoes through to different parts of pipe that we didn't know were going to be there, which is always useful. They've been being recorded as part of the requirements of the Archaeological Authority. And one thing we are looking to do is do some more sort of public interactive sessions with that archaeology as well as we start finding more. We're hoping, of course, well, the archaeologists might not be, but I'm hoping, of course, that we don't run into another Wall Street causeway.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, I wondered if that's where the question was going.
I mean, I was aware of the length of time involved with that, and it's brilliant to hear about that interaction. No, that's very helpful. Thank you for your answer, Dr. Heseltine.
Councillor Elder.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple of questions, and looking at progress and timing, and I was just wondering how the work is progressing now that Christmas is past with the London Street and enabling works in London, Frederick and Pulil.
I hazard to say this, but currently both those sections are slightly ahead of schedule from where we thought they would be.
Yeah.
But now I've said that, touch wood. So the biggest things that are our risks in that space are what continues to happen with the COVID numbers. The team have a very robust process in place and working in bubbles, but obviously there is still some risk that if a bubble of workers goes down, that could cause us delays. And the other is unexpected ground conditions. Nothing so far that we haven't been able to overcome has come up. So we're hoping that we will stay ahead of schedule on both of those things. The final thing to note on that is that we have the section outside the hospital next. And so we're working very closely with the District Health Board around that. But obviously that could shift around a little bit depending on what happens with the public response to COVID.
Thank you.
So just a question about parking, and that's a question a lot of people ask, and access to the Pulil Street Park. How is that being managed? Because it's an awkward access way anyway.
To the Pulil Street car park, was that?
Yes.
So for the next section, so you're thinking about access into Meridian, etc.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Yes, so one of the things in the plans for the enabling works is that there was a plan to put a right-hand turn into the Pulil Street car parks, the Meridian Golden Centre. We're working with Meridian to get that in ahead of the road closing and making sure that Dunedin people know that the Hanover Street entrance will be closed and that the Meridian there'll be an extra entrance coming in off there. So kind of advancing some of the works ahead of it. We've been in conversations with Meridian about that, and they're positive about that. They also have some maintenance works, as I understand it, on the ramp to do at the same time. So it works out well.
I forgot I had 3 questions, and my other one was actually to do with parking, but it's actually we're doing the farmers block, and the car park building is in there, and also farmers has a car park. Is there any conversations with both those places as to whether there could be secure cycle facilities?
So the only car park in that block is the one behind farmers.
Yes.
Yeah, so we haven't had any conversations about cycle parking in that area. I've been working with the team upstairs that are working on the cycle hubs project, and we have looked at a couple of opportunities for those, actually one in the farmers block and one elsewhere, but that's only in its very infancy, that project. But we will be looking at expanding bike parking wherever we can.
Thank you. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to say, well, I've got quite a few things to say about 3 or 4 questions, but firstly, I really like some of your marketing ideas, so well done. I think some of those are good. Well, all of them look quite good. I've made the assumption, I'm just thinking that I might be wrong in making this, that the through roads will still be clear for people to cross George Street, but you'll still need to do the work through there, I suppose. So I'm probably wrong in making that assumption, am I?
So you're thinking, sorry.
What's the question, Councillor?
My question is, you know, say like where you can cross at the moment, for example, where Frederick Street, there's work being done and you can't get up Frederick Street. Will that happen when each of these blocks are done, that the throughway won't be available, or will you be able to cross through? Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, no, I see what you're questioning. Yes, so progressively each one will close, but so the plan is that it's why we started with London, Frederick at the moment. So as we open those ones up, we can then progressively close the next street down. So there will always be one section north-south and one section east-west closed. But we've been doing quite a bit of work on the modelling over the last month to ensure that we've got the combination of those correct. So to make sure the disruption is as little as possible. But unfortunately, yes, there are some quite substantial Three Waters assets that run down each of those side streets.
Yeah, because it's making quite a bit of disruption at the moment. This morning, it took me half an hour to get from the
Councillor, would you ask a question, please?
Down Albany Street, because of course Frederick's closed and it's putting heaps of pressure on Albany. My other question is around what sort of feedback? Is it too early yet? What sort of feedback are you getting from the businesses on some of the marketing initiatives you've suggested?
So
I assume you've consulted them before you went ahead with it.
So the overall idea of the marketing was schemes or campaigns was run through the construction reference group and was a suggestion for them to try and offset some of the potential disruption. We haven't gone into detail with those groups yet. The first meeting will be later this month, where we'll show some more of the marketing assets there. But yes, there was broad support through the construction reference group for that idea.
And will a lot of this messaging around gorgeous Georgianess, and will that be on the radio and the local TV? Is that the plan as well?
Correct. We're definitely looking at radio. TV is something that we haven't looked at yet. But the other is also using typical print media, and also looking at things like poster campaigns on the poster boards around town as well, to try and pick up some of the people who might not either tap into online or traditional media.
And on the website, is the intention that you could feature sort of things if people wanted to buy? Will there be an ability on the website for people to buy off that, or is it to get them to come into the business?
The preference at this stage has been to look at just bringing them into the business. There are other platforms out there that already enable shopping online or directing back to other businesses, and I don't think that's a space that we necessarily need to get into.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. Mr. Hazelton, we saw in the ODT and follow-up correspondence about businesses being affected and concerns with them. What about the residents in the area, especially around Falel Street and up Pitt Street? Not Pitt Street, up Frederick Street. Well, so up London Street. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so there have been, obviously with any of these types of works, there are always complaints and advice coming through. So far, none of the issues have been particularly difficult to deal with. Some have been related to access, but the team's doing a really good job of resolving those, each one as they come up, and finding ways around that. For the residents in particular, there's always a commitment to making sure that they can get in and out whenever they want. Can be slightly difficult, or it might take them a little bit more time. The only other complaints that we've been dealing with have predominantly been around noise and the time of working, and obviously that can be a challenge between businesses who would want us to do all of the work at night and residents who clearly don't want us to do all the work at night. So we're just trying to find a balance between those, and that will shift a little bit between each block depending on how many residents are in the area.
Yeah, thank you. That actually leads into my next question, because it was going to be related to the hours of work and whether there was just one shift or two shifts running to sort of try and speed the work through.
It's a mix at the moment. So they've predominantly been working between 6:30 and in the morning and 6:30 at night, or 7 to 7 by the time they're doing their set up and pack down. There have been some areas where we've already been doing night works. Those are predominantly where we've needed to work around businesses who close at 8 or 9 at night and then wash their dishes, etc. So for us to do water shutdowns and cutovers. And some of the blocks on George Street, we're still investigating at the moment whether we could double up another night shift as well. And the farmers block might well be one of those, on the basis that there are only 3 legally established apartments in that block. So it probably does give us a bit more flexibility around that work. So we are looking at that, expanding that further. But in the blocks we've done so far, we've kind of been feeling that we're at the limit of where we could push those nighttime working hours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. There appear to be no further questions, so I'll move the recommendation that we note the update report, seconded by Councillor Walker. In doing so, I won't speak at length, but I do want to, Dr. Hazelton, thank you for the not only the focus that I think is quite exciting, but also the professionalism and the expertise that you are bringing to this task. It's obviously not unhelpful to have the track record of your achievements in the warehouse precinct behind us, but it's great to see how this is progressing and how you are managing what are not inconsiderable challenges. So thank you for that, and well done. Further speakers? Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I just want to say, I mean, I really do love so many of the initiatives in this paper. And also want to thank Dr. Hazelton for his diligent professionalism. And I particularly like, from what I read, that in many ways we're sort of learning from some of our poorer experiences of the past, actually. And I guess front-footing this in terms of both communication and actually assistance as well, which I think is a very wise thing for us to do. And, you know, because I do, whether we like it or not, the building period will be problematic for some, and many in fact. So I think whatever we can do to make that less problematic for as many people as possible should be applauded, actually. But ultimately, of course, what we do get, and hopefully what we all support, is a more vibrant city centre, a greener city centre, and actually ultimately a much more people-friendly city centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. I also want to echo the great work that Mr. Hazelton's doing. I also want to, acknowledge the communication and branding around Hey Gorgeous. I just think that was has been really well done, and congrats to all those involved with that. It's a really good description. It really tells the story and focuses on what needs to be done, especially the emphasis around the infrastructure and the age of the infrastructure. But I think, yeah, keep those comms coming. They look really good. I also want to thank Mr. Hazelton for acknowledging the work having to be done with the residents, not just the businesses, and also something that I've been consistently engaged with was the fact of hours of work and actually trying to maximize the working opportunities to try and shorten the timeline of this project, and looking at other ways we can do business, and whether it's double shifts or extended through. So in the overall scheme, there'll be less impact on the businesses of George Street. So thank you for the work, and it's an extremely difficult one you're challenged with, but well done, keep it up. Thank you.
Councillor Vandervis.
I remain unconvinced of the value of the George Street upgrade, $60 million for that.
Councillor, we're not talking about, I've muted you, Councillor, we're not talking about the policy decision. If you wish to talk about the report, feel free to do so.
I wish to speak about the George Street Retail Quarter project upgrade and this item.
Please do.
Please don't mute me again. I'm not here. I'm not putting my time and effort into being here to be muted by you.
Councillor, if you don't stick...
I have things to say on this agenda about this item, and I do not want to be further interrupted by you, Councillor Benson Pope.
Councillor Vandervis, if you speak off the topic, you will be muted. Carry on, please.
I will decide what I am going to speak on, and I will continue to speak on it. And if you choose to mute me again and abuse your position, then I will simply leave the meeting, because I do not want my time to be wasted by you.
Point of order. Point of order.
Point of order, Councillor Hurleyhan.
Councillor Vandervis was speaking on topic, so I'm not sure why he
Councillor
was
Hurleyhan, can you tell me what the point of order is, please? The number of the point of order. Councillor Vandervis, would you continue, please?
Yes. I have not been convinced of the value of the $60 million surface treatment spend that has been pushed through council for a number of years now. Regarding the spend, which this paper confirms is actually paying for a number of what are called activations, which I think more accurately would describe as public relations exercises, I don't believe are appropriate. If you're going to do an upgrade, then you do the upgrade and you let people decide what value it has and what value it doesn't have. If we look at last year's annual plan submissions, the second most popular submission was that 172 submitters basically says that we don't go ahead with this $60 million spend. What we are now going ahead with in this paper is a regular e-newsletter, activations including lighting and audio auditory installations. We are setting up workshops to tell businesses how to run their businesses and go online. And we are paying to have expertise brought in to do this. I believe all of these things are inappropriate for us to be doing. I believe that they simply misuse a budget and try to convince people of the value of something which I think will be shown to have very little, if any, value at all. The disruption to traffic, the denial of the route through George Street, which we have always had, the claim that it's a one-way system when in fact, as I see it, it's simply a cycleway with emergency vehicle access, means that this particular spend is one of the worst decisions that we've made this century and one of the most unpopular. Getting Mr. Hazelton's undoubted expertise to try and popularise it has been perhaps a cunning move on the part of the DCC, but I don't believe it will be enough to convince the public that this 60 million spend is an enormous mistake. It's unaffordable, and it's not going to
point of
yield
order,
the
Mr. Chairman.
claimed developments.
Point of order.
I mean, I can ignore the first two, but the third one does seem excessive. The budget for the George Street retail quarter upgrade as part of the Central City Plan work is not $60 million, as the councillor continues to repeat.
That is not what I said.
As he well knows, only 28 million of that $60 million budget is set aside for the Central City Plan work.
Your Worship,
for the George Street work.
So the point of order reference number is, Your Worship?
Sorry, 25 to D. It's misrepresentation of the decisions of council.
Thank you. I'll uphold that. It's clearly hasn't been helpful for the member to provide inaccurate information. Councillor Van der Vis, I've been very tolerant with Councillor Van der Vis, I've been very tolerant with you in terms of my initial request for you to stay on topic. You may continue, but please don't err from the report again.
I'd like to make a point of order at this point.
What's the point of order, councillor? What's the point of order? The number of the point of order?
A misrepresentation. Point 25.2D.
Specifically?
25.2D. Well, the mayor has made a point of order that there has no statement by a member or an officer or council employee in this meeting that Councillor Van der Vis has spoken against.
No,
he has not misrepresented anything. He has.
Councillor, I have ruled that I upheld the point of order. You are arguing with me about the point of order. That will get you into difficulties with the standing orders. Councillor Van der Vis, please carry on. I can't hear you.
He's mute.
I didn't do that. Councillor Van der Vis, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Thank you. He's taken himself off to check.
Is he taking himself off?
Well, to check.
While we're waiting to find out what's happening here, we'll go to Councillor Gary, who was the next speaker. What's happening?
Councillor Gary is also muted.
She's gone. Councillor.
She's there. She's just muted.
Where is she?
Bottom left.
Oh, okay. Like Councillor Gary must be making himself a cup of tea. Councillor Lord, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Right,
yep.
Your turn.
Look, I was just going to say, look, we're noting the report here. I'm happy to note and receive it, but I just did see the irony in Councillor Van der Vis' comments about he couldn't support an e-newsletter, and he felt that these things, helping and supporting businesses, was a bridge too far, just basically lollies or whatever to make. That wasn't the words he used, but outside of the scope of the project of work. Now, it was quite clear at previous meetings of this council, and probably this committee, we've made it very clear that we want to do all that we can to support the businesses, acknowledging that there will be disruption for them, and it's not our desire to disrupt or send anyone broke. It's our desire to make it a better place. But on the meeting came from councillors was very, very clear to Mr. Hazelton that he was to do whatever he could to make it smooth as possible transition. And I think it's entirely appropriate to have an e-newsletter for all the residents and for the retailers. And I also think it's entirely, if we can do anything to help them to support they do their businesses online or anything else, that's just absolutely common sense and in the scope of what he's been asked to do. So very supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm about to go back to you, Councillor Van der Vis, because you dropped out and I don't know what happened there, but a number of councillors are referring to Dr. Hazelton by other than his actual title, so I'd appreciate your cooperation with that. Councillor Van der Vis.
I don't have anything further to say.
Thank you. Further speakers, Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to comment on the work that's being done with the businesses last year and some of the reports we got. We got a report on the state of retail throughout New Zealand and also throughout Otago. And Otago was one, and Dunedin were sort of some areas that were quite hard hit with the amount of movement to online retail. And the thing that we're doing in George Street is actually going to create this destination retail, which is what people want and are moving towards. And I also think that the support work is really important. When I was looking after Cruise for Council, part of the support work that we did was helping businesses get online and helping businesses build their social and digital strategy. So I totally applaud the work that's being done to make this happen. And I think that it will really help and strengthen businesses. And in the comms plan, that was a very thick plan that came to council around George Street last year. It's great to see a lot of those things being enacted. I did ask, is this comms plan going to be enacted and is this work going to be done? So it's really pleasing to see this being done, and I particularly like the Hey Georges work that's being done as well. I think that's quite clever, and it's nice to see council being a bit clever about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies before. I just wanted to note a couple of things. One of them was the appreciation of the partnership with Business South. That seems like a very appropriate and timely partnership, given that it's not everyone's forte to pivot, a very overused word, but it's appropriate in this case, to online sales and retail. Some will be really good at it, some will be learning, and I think it's a superb partnership. But I did just want to touch on how excited I am to see the progress on this project. As I navigated my way across curbs in George Street on crutches after knee replacement surgery in November, I took photos several times and sent them through to the team because it was really tough. It was really difficult to maneuver those different heights. And I can only imagine how it must be with a physical disability in our current surfaces on George Street, and how much better it's going to be. And how grateful I am that we have, and delighted I am that we have listened to our disability community as a council and made the decision to get on with this work, and notwithstanding the infrastructure work underneath the road. But for those trying to, if you've ever pushed a wheelchair, it is very difficult getting someone out of a car into a wheelchair in our current scenario. So this is progress. And this is going to make a huge difference to so many people, as well as adding that vibrancy. So wonderful work, good to see. Thank you, Dr. Heseltine. I know there's many challenges within it, but the work is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thought I would add my thanks to Dr. Hazelton. He has been doing everything he can to engage with the businesses in the areas where these works are being undertaken. And I guess for me as chair, there is a degree of disappointment that so many businesses choose not to be engaged at a time when the construction work that's going to be going on around them will be very, very significant. And the only way we can make sure that their businesses are impacted in the least possible way is for us to understand their business, know them, know what their needs are, so that our contractors, who are prepared to do things way out of the normal for contractors, can help achieve those things. For instance, during London Street, they help with bringing residents' wheelie bins in and out. As I say, everything they can to make sure that those people affected by the works are supported as best they can be. So I've just for those that are watching this meeting, if you happen to be in that retail quarter, we'd really appreciate you getting engaged with us as the works progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raddick.
Yes. Well, I think Dr. Hazelton is doing a good job, and he's getting out there and marketing the changes to George Street as best he can, and is communicating effectively with all those various businesses. However, we've got a pretty significant problem in addition to the major disruption that this council is causing on George Street at this time, and that we have COVID. We have a worldwide pandemic, and we have the country in a very disturbed and distressed state because of the advent of COVID virus. And now, over the next few months, that is going to be coming to Dunedin and spreading. So all of those businesses on that street have had to fight their way through the pandemic, and now they're going to have to try and fight their way through this massive disruption. So it's no wonder they're not, engaging so much with these, relatively small measures, and shifting wheelie bins in and out will not replace the many thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of turnover that they are missing from their businesses, and the difficulty they now find themselves in with employees and stock control as well, shipments with the COVID, and employees being able to keep people employed and keep their customer services serviced while also losing customers dramatically. And it's very difficult when the whole world is trying to pivot online. It becomes, even more competitive for them out there. Their businesses on George Street are based on people coming to that street for shopping. And the purpose of this makeover that the council is doing is to change that street into a street for people coming and going.
Councillor, you're straying away from the report. I'd like you to return to the report, which is under discussion, not the wider policy decisions that council has made about the future of that street. Carry on, please. Councillor, you're on mute. You might like to unmute yourself.
If you muted me, you can unmute me. So I was quiet while you were speaking. You did no need to mute me whatsoever.
Councillor, I'm asking you to stay on topic, please, and talk about the report.
I'm precisely on topic and led in, as you recall, with praise for what Dr. Hazelton is doing. But I would bring it to everyone's attention, which is critical to the report in hand, that those retailers on George Street are living with a great deal of fear for their businesses, for their employees, and for their future on that street.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A state of anxiety, which is understandable and not helped, I don't think, by the fear mongering of elected members around the decisions that we have taken to invest in a more accessible, a more inclusive, and a more vibrant city centre. But we're not here to relitigate those debates or try and subvert the decisions that have been previously taken by council. And I find it odd that people making comment around how this is somehow PR spin or a cunning move to employ staff to deliver on the decisions that council has taken. And much has been made rightly of Dr. Hazelton's role in this, but I do want to thank Councillor Staines as the chair of this group and instigator of its existence way back when we were having the conversation about what we wanted the future of the city centre to look like. it was the Chair of Economic Development who suggested that perhaps we might, regardless of what we're going to do, it's going to be disruptive, and we need a process for being able to minimise disruption for affected businesses through that period, and that is exactly what we have here. A report that walks through how we might support business, and I can't see why you wouldn't think that communicating with affected retailers and letting them know what's going on would be a bad idea, and I can't see how you could think that intervention and installations that attract people into the city centre and who therefore are customers for all those businesses in a period of disruption could possibly be a bad idea. And I applaud the efficient methods that staff have used to tap into existing programs to test whether or not there is an appetite for affected businesses to expand their skill base and try and support them in that way. And I hope that those opportunities are taken up and the case is made for greater support in those sorts of areas. But look, this is it's exciting seeing the enabling works underway. I'm looking forward to seeing the farmers block as the first substantive piece of work as part of this upgrade that has been canvassed for over a decade at least, and is finally going to be underway this year as we work towards building, as I say, a more vibrant and people-friendly city centre. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to say also to Dr. Hazelton, I really, I like the Georginess. I think that's quite cute and it will attract a bit of attention. I like the ideas around the marketing and the little flyer. So hopefully those will help. My only concern is that it'll be difficult for people to get in, and I think there needs to be some element. My suggestion would be around, on the online part, for some way for businesses to be able to sell through some of that marketing rather than bringing people in, because I don't think people are, it's actually really difficult to get in when there's that disruption, because right now you can't get near London Street or Frederick, and that's what it's going to be like. So I just think maybe we need to expand that and think further about how we can get purchases so that conversion rate optimization for them. There's been quite a few comments going back and forward. As everybody knows, I'm opposed to the one way, but I'm certainly not opposed to upgrading the infrastructure. It has to be done. But I think given the timing of this project, we are now giving businesses all this disruption at a time where COVID is hitting them hard, and particularly the businesses in the CBD, which is the businesses that are affected. A lot of, including ourselves, we're all working from home now. A lot of other businesses are, so that takes all the people out from the city who would normally go buy a coffee or go shop, and they're hurting. They're really hurting right now. And add to that this disruption, which the underground work has to be done. We need to put a ceiling on the top, but the dispute is around whether it's, one way or two way, and it's been decided by the majority that it's going to be one way, which of course I think is a shame. But I think we're giving this work is being done at this time, I think is adding extra stress to absolutely stressed out business owners and could see businesses close. And that's not fear mongering. That is the truth. I mean, you can call that fear mongering if you like, but what I am calling for today, and I've called for it another time, and I know it will cost money, but we need to put a hand in our pocket and give some financial support to these businesses over this time, because we're...
Councillor, I've been pretty tolerant with you, but you're straying way off the topic. So would you please return?
Plus, I want to add, stop muting people.
Councillor, don't interrupt me, please.
Excuse me, I haven't interrupted you. Stop.
Councillor, would you just please display a little, some manners and stay on the topic, or I will mute you.
It is absolutely obscene, the dictatorship that we have from the chair of this committee.
I'm sorry, that's not acceptable, and I'd ask you to apologise.
I will not.
All right, then please leave the meeting. Thank you. Are there any further speakers? There appear to be none. I wish to
leave the meeting as well as a protest at the dictatorship of this particular chair.
By Mr. Vandervis. I'll speak briefly in reply. I can only echo the positive comments that people have made. I think this is extraordinarily exciting work for the Central City. I look forward, as the majority of colleagues do, to seeing this work underway. I'm sure it will be extremely useful for our residents and property owners and retailers to see the first block of finished work, and will also help with, I guess, designs that will be refined as things go on. So that takes me to putting the noting of this update report. Those in favour, please raise their hand. Those against?
Yes, at this point, I would like to
is that you want that vote recorded, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That was Councillor Radich voting against noting the report. That's overwhelmingly carried. Thank you. And that takes us to the final item on the agenda, items for consideration by the chair. Does anyone have anything they'd like to raise? Apparently not.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Your worship.
Yeah, thank you. Just following on from the earlier discussion with staff around making available options or pathways, at least for businesses to make greater use of the outdoor environment. Just wanted to raise that with the chair of this committee to be stuck on the to-do list. Thanks.
Thank you. Duly noted by Mr. West on my left. Just before I close the meeting, can I thank you for your patience at the beginning, and including the patience of our two new members. We do have these challenges to overcome thanks to the wider physical environment. So thank you very much. And thank you for a relatively expeditious meeting. I hope you have an enjoyable afternoon. And I'll close the meeting.